I didn't grow up dreaming of some big fairy tale wedding, but I also didn't picture my sister turning the whole thing into a punchline. If you've never seen a military wedding, let me set the record straight. It's simple, respectful, and actually pretty beautiful. You've got the honor guard, the uniforms pressed sharper than most people's personalities, and a small chapel that smells like floor wax and old hymn books. It's not flashy, but it means something, at least to the people who show up. Rachel, of course, didn't. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't even pretend she had a scheduling conflict. And trust me, my sister is the queen of pretending. If she needs to avoid responsibility, she'll manufacture a whole grieving process for a goldfish routine. But for my wedding, she couldn't be bothered with even that. She just ignored the invitation like it was a coupon for something she didn't care about. The morning of the ceremony, while I was getting my hair pinned down tighter than my stress levels, I remember staring at my phone. Not to see if Rachel would suddenly act like a human being. I already knew the odds on that one, but in case my parents texted something supportive, or at least neutral, nothing came. Just a silent screen and my reflection in it, looking like someone trying really hard not to think about the absence she could feel more than any presence in the room. Alex, my husband, wasn't worried about any of that. He was too busy trying not to wrinkle his uniform or pass out from nerves. Meanwhile, I was mentally prepping for the possibility that one of my bridesmaids would ask, "Where's your sister?" And I'd have to pretend she was sick, or traveling, or caught in a freak tornado for dramatic effect, but no one asked. People in the military understand that sometimes family doesn't make the cut. Sometimes your real family is the one you serve with. The ceremony itself went smoothly. The chaplain spoke. The honor guard made everything look fancy, and Alex didn't faint. I walked out of that chapel thinking, okay, maybe today can just be about the people who actually care. Then I opened my phone. Rachel had posted an Instagram story from a completely different wedding, a flashy one. Giant floral arches, champagne towers, the whole thing dripping in money someone probably didn't actually have. And right over the video, she wrote, "Now this is a real wedding. No boots, no badges." I just stared at it. Not shocked. Rachel has been Rachel since the day she realized attention was a currency, but disappointed in that familiar, heavy way. The kind of disappointment that settles into your chest like it's unpacking luggage for a long-term stay. My maid of honor saw my face, leaned in, and whispered, "Was that about you?" I just pretended I hadn't seen anything and told her I was fine. Later that night, after the reception, when the music died down and the last drunk sergeant finally stopped trying to karaoke, I checked my phone again. That's when her text came in. "Still can't believe you wore that thing to your wedding." That thing. She meant my uniform. The one I spent years earning. The one that had been through deployments, storms, 12-hour watches, and enough inspections to traumatize a lesser person. She said it like I'd shown up wearing a plastic bag. I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to. Not because I'd explode, but because I wouldn't. Silence is my specialty. It always has been. Rachel talks, I absorb. She mocks, I swallow it. She shines, I dim, so she won't feel threatened. At least that's how it used to be. But for the first time, while staring at that text, something shifted. Nothing dramatic, just a small internal snap, like a tiny thread that had been holding a whole lot of weight finally giving up. I didn't feel angry. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel surprised. I just felt done. Done carrying the disappointment. Done hoping she'd ever show up the way a sister should. If you're watching this video, and you've ever had a family member like that, someone who turns milestones into jokes and accomplishments into competitions, drop a comment. I want to know I'm not the only one whose family support system came with a hazard warning. And seriously, if you like stories where people finally get tired of being treated like the family doormat, hit subscribe. It helps the channel. And trust me, the rest of this story gets interesting in ways even I didn't expect. Back to the wedding night. After we got back to our apartment, Alex asked if I wanted to call my family. I said no. I didn't want to turn a private conversation into a group therapy session, and I definitely didn't want to hear whatever excuse they'd come up with for Rachel's behavior. I'd heard them all before. She's stressed. She doesn't mean it. You know, Rachel. As if that somehow made everything okay. I hung up my uniform, took off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. Not sad, not angry, just tired. Tired in a way that wasn't physical, wasn't emotional, just a kind of certainty that whatever I'd been hoping my sister would someday become, she wasn't going to, at least not for me. What I didn't know that night was how quickly the balance between us would shift, or how fast Rachel would go from ignoring my wedding to suddenly treating me like her new favorite person. All it took was one moment, one ceremony, one headline that changed everything she thought she knew about me, and everything I thought I knew about her. I didn't answer her text that night, and I didn't bring it up the next day either. I just woke up, pulled my hair into a tight bun, laced up my boots, and reported back to base like nothing had happened. That's the thing about the military. No one cares if your family drama is bleeding out behind your eyes as long as you show up, squared away, and ready to work, you're good. But that silence, the one I kept so well contained on the outside, always had a way of echoing when I was alone. You'd think I'd be used to Rachel's behavior by now. It's not like that wedding text came out of nowhere. She's been treating me like a background character in her personal spotlight since we were kids. I just spent years pretending it didn't bother me. When we were little, Rachel was the sparkle. That's what Mom called her, sparkle. Like she came out of the womb with a tiara and lighting design. She was loud, beautiful, clever, in that fake humble kind of way that made adults say, "Oh, she's going places." Me? I was practical, quiet, mature for my age. You know, the words people use when they can't think of anything nice to say, but still want to sound polite. Rachel was always front and center. School plays, talent shows, class president. I was the one holding the phone to record her. At dinner, if Rachel had a bad day, it became a household emergency. If I had a good day, Mom would say, "That's great, honey," without looking up from peeling carrots. I still remember the day I told my parents I wanted to enlist in the Navy. I was 17. My dad was reading the paper, and Mom was folding laundry. I said it plain and simple. I wanted to serve, to do something that mattered, to see the world and make it better. Dad didn't even lower the newspaper. He just said, "College would be smarter." Mom asked, "Why not nursing school?" Rachel laughed. "You, military?" She wasn't even trying to be subtle. You'd cry during boot camp. She made a joke about how I'd probably flunk out because I can't run without looking like I'm trying to catch a bus. They laughed. I didn't. I signed the papers anyway. At graduation from basic, I sent them an invite to the ceremony. They didn't come. I got a message from my mom 2 days later that said, "Hope you're doing okay." Rachel's dance recital was amazing. She was the lead. I was standing outside the barracks when I read it, alone, holding the only thing I had left from them, a crumpled letter, and a name that barely felt like it belonged to me anymore. It's funny. You learn to carry that stuff the way you carry your ruck, heavy at first, then just a part of your weight. After a while, you don't even realize how long you've been bending your back to make it look like it doesn't hurt. I tried over and over to reconnect. Birthday cards, holiday messages. One time I sent Rachel a gift from Bahrain, handmade jewelry from a market she probably would have loved if someone else had given it to her. I never even got a thank you. But I kept trying. Part of me still believed I could earn my place. That if I just worked hard enough, became impressive enough, they'd finally say, "We see you." But the truth is, I was never invisible. I was ignored on purpose. That realization didn't hit me all at once. It built up over time. Like when I came home on leave one Christmas and saw they had put up a giant photo of Rachel in the living room, her at a charity gala with a local politician. No pictures of me. Not even the one I sent from my first deployment. When I asked Mom about it, she said, "We don't really have any good photos of you in uniform." Right. Because the one I mailed her, smiling in my dress blues with the American flag behind me, wasn't good enough. Or maybe it just didn't match the house decor. I stopped sending photos after that. There was a turning point, a small one, but it hit like a slap. During my 3rd year in, I wrote a letter from a ship somewhere off the coast of Japan. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a note saying I missed them, that I was safe, and I hoped they were proud. I sealed it, mailed it, and tried not to obsess about whether they'd reply. Months later, I came home on short leave. I walked into the guest bedroom and found a stack of papers on the dresser. Old magazines, coupons, junk mail, and right in the middle was my letter. Still sealed, unopened. Mom had put it in a pile with supermarket ads and Bed Bath & Beyond flyers. I held it in my hand like it was evidence. And I guess it was. Proof that I could pour my heart into an envelope, and they wouldn't even bother to tear it open. That's when I stopped writing. I didn't make a big announcement. No dramatic speech. I just stopped. I kept going with my life, focused on training, on leadership qualifications, on taking every assignment seriously. If they weren't going to see me, I'd make damn sure the rest of the world did. And the world did start noticing. My name showed up on internal commendation lists. Officers pulled me aside after exercises and said things like, "That's the kind of sailor we need leading teams." I worked hard. I stayed sharp. I earned respect. The only people who didn't seem to care were the ones who shared my last name. But that never stopped me. Because one thing about being ignored for most of your life, you get very good at building a life no one thought you could. The thing about service life is that it doesn't give you much time to dwell. One minute you're prepping for a mission, the next you're getting chewed out for forgetting to log fuel levels, then, before you know it, you're in a different time zone, eating cold eggs out of a plastic tray, and hoping the satellite Wi-Fi holds long enough to FaceTime home. Only, I stopped trying to FaceTime home after a while. I remember sitting in a small, beat-up communications room on deployment, watching the guy next to me light up when his wife picked up. 2 screens over, someone's kid was holding up a crayon drawing to the camera, proud as hell. Me? I'd already closed out of mine after 3 unanswered calls. After a while, I started planning around the silence. I'd send an email and not expect a reply. I'd send a care package home for Christmas, not because they needed it, but because I felt guilty not doing it, and maybe 3 weeks later, I'd get a generic, "Thanks, Han," from my mom, like I'd sent her a coupon book, instead of hand-picked gifts from a base halfway across the world. Rachel? Forget it. I think she blocked my number somewhere around year 2. Either that or she was just committed to the full ghosting experience. Not that I needed her updates. Her entire life was on social media, fashion brunches, champagne fundraisers, beach selfies with captions like, "Making moves," while I was hauling gear through monsoon season and trying not to slip in mud that smelled like jet fuel. It was surreal, watching her life from that distance. She looked like she was thriving, but I could see right through it. Every candid post was filtered to hell, every caption screamed, validation hunger. And yet, she still had an audience, my parents included. They'd reshare her pictures with captions like, "Our girl, changing the world." Meanwhile, I once got a text from my dad that said, "Hope you're staying out of trouble over there." That was his version of support, so I stopped trying to prove anything. I just worked. I became the person who always showed up first and left last. When the base needed volunteers, I raised my hand. When a teammate was struggling, I was the one who noticed. Promotions didn't come fast, but they came consistently. I earned respect the hard way quietly, without shortcuts, without anyone clearing a path for me. During a training exercise in the Gulf, I took command of a team during a medical emergency after our lead blacked out from heat stroke. No drama, no hesitation, I just handled it. We got him stabilized, got everyone back safely, and the XO pulled me aside afterward and said, "You're the kind of sailor we trust with lives." That stuck with me, not because I needed praise, but because for once, someone saw what I brought to the table. I started mentoring new recruits, not because I had to, but because I remembered what it felt like to be dropped into this life with no support system. Most of them had family showing up for graduation. Mine had sent a $20 Amazon card. Over time, I started building something for myself that had nothing to do with Rachel, or my parents, or whether they ever figured out I was worth being proud of. I got accepted into a leadership development program, passed evaluations with top marks, and got tapped for an elite rotation that only took 10 sailors per year. That's when the award nominations started. Quiet at first, commendations, internal recognitions, but then bigger. Eventually, a senior officer recommended me for a Navy Commendation Medal, and that nomination actually made it to the regional press. My name, my story, my face in uniform, standing with my team, was printed on actual paper, not just buried on a bulletin board behind the chow hall. And guess what? Even then, no call from home. No text. No, we saw the article. Not even a thumbs-up reaction to the digital version. I emailed them, just in case. I'm not gonna lie, it stung. I'd gotten used to the idea that they didn't care. But seeing my name printed in a newspaper that I knew my dad still read every Sunday and still, nothing? That hit different. I started asking myself the kind of questions most people avoid when they're trying to function day to day. Like, why was I still hoping they'd come around? Why did I keep offering olive branches to people who didn't even notice I was standing there with my hand out? That's when I made the shift. I stopped trying to heal it. I wasn't broken. The relationship was. I didn't need to forgive anyone to function. I just needed to stop letting their absence mean anything. Around that same time, a friend on base introduced me to her family during a video call. Her mom leaned into the screen and said, "You're the one she always talks about. You're like family to us." And I swear to God, it meant more than any text I never got from Rachel. I built a life where I didn't have to compete to be seen. My team knew me. My commanding officers trusted me. My friends didn't flinch when I brought up rank or deployments, or the fact that I had to spend Christmas on a flight line. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't curated. But it was real. And it kept moving. Because while Rachel was busy crafting highlight reels, I was earning respect in ways she didn't even understand. I didn't expect anything big that week. My unit had been told we'd be part of a formal Navy ceremony, something about historical recognition, and honestly, I thought I'd be one of 100 faces in the background clapping politely for someone else's promotion. I didn't even shine my boots extra that morning. But when I got to the prep briefing, the command rep pulled me aside and said, "You've been selected for flag detail during the live broadcast. Dress sharp." That was the first sign something was different. The second was when I saw the camera crews. They were setting up everywhere: tripods, gimbals, light panels, reporters adjusting their ties and rehearsing intros while checking their hair in phone screens. Turns out, this wasn't just a Navy event, it was a full-blown broadcast with national coverage. CNN, local affiliates, even C-SPAN had crews present. I felt like I'd walked into the Super Bowl of ceremonies. The Navy was commemorating the 200th anniversary of a key historical base, and they were highlighting service members from underrepresented backgrounds. Someone had submitted my name, probably my CO. He never told me, but I found out later from the admin office. Apparently, he liked that I didn't try to make noise, but still got things done faster than people twice my size and rank. They asked me to give a short speech. Just 2 minutes. Nothing dramatic. Just talk about why I joined, what service meant to me, and what it felt like to represent women in the military. I almost said no. Public speaking isn't exactly on the top of most sailors' wish lists. And doing it on live television? That was a recipe for stomach knots and accidental swearing. But something in me said, do it. Not for Rachel, not for anyone else, for me. So I agreed. I stood there that afternoon, staring out at a crowd of officers, civilians, camera lenses, and flashing lights. I wore my dress blues, chest tight with nerves, but posture perfect. When they called my name, I stepped up to the podium, adjusted the mic, and took a deep breath. Then I spoke. I talked about how I didn't come from a military family, how I didn't have a legacy name or a parent pushing me to serve. I joined because I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I talked about being underestimated, about walking into rooms where no one expected the quiet girl in the corner to lead. I didn't mention Rachel, not directly, but I said this. Sometimes, the people closest to you are the last to notice what you're capable of. But service has a way of showing you who you really are, especially when no one's looking. That line hit. I saw people nodding. Officers clapped a little harder when I stepped back. After the ceremony, the Navy's official Twitter account posted a photo of me at the podium. That photo exploded. Within hours, I was getting tagged in reshared posts from military spouses, veteran orgs, even a couple of political figures. The next day, USA Today ran a human interest piece on the women featured in the ceremony, and there I was. Page B2. My name, my face, and my story, printed next to a headline that read, "Silent Strength, How This Sailor Rose in a Sea of Noise." I didn't cry. I didn't even smile that much. I just sat there staring at the paper like it had cracked open a dimension I wasn't sure I belonged to. I texted my dad a photo of the article, no response. I emailed it to my mom. The email went unopened for 3 days. But the real shock came from somewhere else. And it wasn't subtle. It was Rachel. Not a phone call. Not even a full message. Just a DM. On Instagram. It said, "Hey stranger, saw you on TV. Wow. So proud of you. Let's catch up soon?" It's Sol Day. No punctuation where it mattered. No apology. No, "Sorry I missed the biggest day of your life, 4 years ago" type acknowledgement. Just that fake casual tone she used with influencers and people she wanted something from. And I knew instantly that's what this was. A reconnection attempt. Not out of love, but out of curiosity. Or maybe fear. Fear that the sister she wrote off was suddenly becoming someone with more clout than she expected. I didn't reply. I sat there, staring at her message, while 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind. Every time she'd mocked me, every event she skipped, every comment that made me feel like I was playing backup to her solo act. And now? Suddenly, she wanted a reunion. I could have thrown my phone across the room. Instead, I turned off notifications and went for a run. That's what I do when I need to process without saying things I'll regret later. The next morning, I woke up to another message. "Let's do brunch soon. I have a great idea I think you'll love." Right. Brunch. Because nothing says, "I respect your service" like overpriced eggs and fake hugs. I didn't answer that one either. Because something had shifted. Not in her, but in me. I wasn't angry. I was awake. Awake to the fact that I'd spent years waiting for Rachel to treat me like a sister, while she only ever treated me like a shadow. And now that I was standing in the light, she wanted to act like we'd always been close. Like none of it had happened. And I was supposed to just sit down and share pancakes. I didn't answer her brunch message either. Didn't even open it. I just archived it and got dressed for my next shift like nothing had happened. Because honestly, nothing had happened. A couple of emojis and a last minute, "So proud of you," doesn't count as a relationship reboot. Especially not after 4 years of silence. What hit me wasn't the message itself, it was the way she slid back in like nothing had happened. No shame, no hesitation, just pure Rachel. She could skip every major event in my adult life and still pop up like an ad you can't block, smiling, typing, pretending. My command gave me 2 days off after the ceremony. Technically for rest and mental reset, but anyone in uniform knows it's mostly for optics. Still, I appreciated it. I went for long walks, turned off my phone, ate real food instead of powdered mystery in a pouch. And I let myself breathe without thinking about whether Rachel was suddenly proud of me or whether she was planning something. Because deep down, I knew something was coming. That's how Rachel works. She doesn't just check in. She checks in when she needs something. I told myself, maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was just trying to reconnect, to start over. Maybe I should be the bigger person. Forgive. Reply with something like, "Thanks, appreciate it, hope you're well." But even thinking about typing, that made my stomach turn. That wasn't grace. That was denial. And I'd done enough of that for both of us. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop off base and sat near the window with my laptop. I figured I'd get caught up on emails, knock out some continuing education modules, and maybe people watch for a few hours without any interruptions. I had just taken my first sip when my phone buzzed. Not a DM, a text. From a number I hadn't seen in years, but didn't need to check twice. "Rachel, hey, family dinner this Saturday, at Mom and Dad's, 7 p.m. Come if you can, would love to see you." There it was. Not, "Let's talk." Not, "I owe you an apology." Just a calendar invite disguised as sisterly affection. No mention of the ceremony, the article, or even the 4 years of ghosting. And the emoji? Really? I stared at the message, debating whether to laugh or scream. This woman hadn't spoken to me since before my wedding, and now she was playing hostess like she hadn't thrown me under every bus that ever passed through our childhood. The thing is, my gut didn't say, "Ignore it." It said, "Go." But not to reconnect. To see. See what this was. See how she would spin it. See if she still thought she could control the narrative just by showing up with a smile and a head tilt. I texted back one word. Sure. No exclamation point. No heart. Just the bare minimum to secure my seat. That night, I called my friend Jess. She was stationed with me during my first deployment, one of the few people who knew the full Rachel story, the wedding, the mockery, the way my parents always defaulted to, "Don't make this a big deal," every time I tried to explain why it actually was a big deal. Jess didn't hesitate. "She's planning something," she said flatly. "I know. You good to walk in and not punch her in the teeth?" "I've had worse enemies," I replied. "Yeah, but your enemies didn't wear Lululemon and call it a personality." We laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that sits heavy. I wasn't nervous about seeing Rachel again. I was calm in that weird, steady way you get before a storm when you're not scared, just ready. That week passed slow. I kept my head down, focused on work, ignored the growing number of DMs and LinkedIn requests that started showing up after the ceremony. Suddenly, people I hadn't heard from since high school remembered I existed. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't have the bandwidth to be someone's motivational story. Saturday came. I ironed my civilian clothes, nothing flashy, just dark jeans, a clean blazer, and boots that didn't scuff. I tied my hair back. No makeup, no statement earrings. I wasn't going to perform. I was going to show up as exactly who I had become. No filters, no apologies. The drive to my parents' house was longer than I remembered. They'd moved to a nicer neighborhood a few years back. Bigger house, smaller emotional awareness. When I pulled into the driveway, there were already cars lining the curb. Rachel's bright white SUV was parked diagonally across the front, like it owned the zip code. I took a deep breath, grabbed a bottle of wine I didn't even want to bring, and walked up the steps. Mom opened the door. She looked surprised, but only for a second. "Oh, you made it," she said, like I'd just swung by for groceries. "Everyone's in the dining room." No hug. "No, you look good. Just instructions." The house smelled like too much garlic and expensive candles. Everything was white and beige, like a home staged for a real estate listing. I stepped inside, past the pristine hallway, past the framed photos of Rachel shaking hands with someone in a blazer. Still no pictures of me. At the table, Rachel turned and smiled, like we were long-lost best friends. "There she is," she said, arms outstretched like this was some rom-com reunion. "Wow, you look so professional. Navy really suits you." I said nothing, just handed her the wine. "Oh, you didn't have to bring anything," she said, her tone sugary. "But that's so thoughtful." I sat down at the table, looked around. Dad gave a stiff nod. Someone handed me a plate. Rachel was still talking about her latest venture, some real estate consulting side gig she was launching. Mom nodded along, like it was the next moon landing. Then Rachel looked right at me and said, "Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about tonight. Something exciting, for both of us." And just like that, I knew. She didn't invite me to dinner because she missed me. She invited me because she needed something. I didn't answer right away. I just sipped my water and raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to get to whatever exciting thing she thought I'd be dumb enough to fall for. Rachel always had this way of dressing up her asks like gifts. She'd throw in words like opportunity or partnership when what she really meant was favor or bailout. She glanced at Mom, then at Dad, who stayed silent, chewing his steak like it was a negotiation tactic. Then she said it. "So I've been working on this new brand. I'm calling it Empowered Estates. It's all about high-end real estate for female entrepreneurs and veteran-owned businesses. Super niche, super modern. Anyway, I've got this opportunity coming up in Miami. Press, investors, the whole deal." I nodded slowly. "Sounds expensive." She smiled like I'd just complimented her. "It is. But that's the point, it has to look expensive to attract the right kind of attention. Which is why I thought we could team up. Team up. There it was. "You want me involved in your real estate company?" I asked, not even pretending to hide the skepticism in my voice. She shrugged like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Well, yeah. I mean, you're you now. People know your name. You're on the rise. We'd be a powerhouse together. Military cred, woman-owned, press-friendly. Investors love a patriotic success story." The way she said patriotic made it sound like a costume. I stared at her for a second, letting the silence stretch long enough that even Dad glanced up. She didn't flinch. She thought she was pitching the deal of a lifetime. But all I saw was someone trying to put a fresh coat of paint on a cracked wall and call it a partnership. "Let me get this straight," I said, leaning in just slightly. "You spent 4 years pretending I didn't exist, skipped my wedding, mocked my career choice. And now, because I made it onto one news segment and a couple of articles, you think I should attach my name to your business so you can get funding?" Rachel blinked, but recovered fast. "That's not fair. I've always supported you, even if I didn't say it all the time." I laughed once, sharp. "You mocked me in front of your friends. Remember that brunch after I enlisted? When you said I'd probably end up folding towels on a ship? That was a joke," she said quickly. "God, why are you so dramatic?" Mom cut in then, as she always did when things stopped being polite. "Girls, can we not do this tonight? It's been so long since we've all sat down together." I turned to her, calm but cold. "You mean since before my wedding? Or before my first deployment? Or maybe since that award ceremony no one texted me about?" She didn't respond. She never did when the facts got inconvenient. Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister is offering you an opportunity. Maybe don't be so quick to dismiss it." "Right. Because I was the one who owed her consideration." I looked at Rachel again. "And if my name wasn't in the paper, if the Navy hadn't spotlighted me, would I be sitting here tonight?" She didn't answer. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. "You want me for what I can bring to your brand, not because I'm your sister, not because you respect me, but because I'm useful now." Rachel's face tightened. "I'm trying to build something. Okay? I thought you'd understand that." I stood up slowly, napkin dropping from my lap. "Oh, I do. I've been building something without anyone's help for a decade. I just didn't step on family to do it." The room froze. Dad opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't there to make peace. I wasn't even there to fight. I was just done pretending there was anything left worth salvaging. I walked toward the hallway, already pulling my keys from my bag. Rachel called out after me, "You know, not everything is about you." I paused at the door. "No," I said without turning. "Just this. For once, this is about me." And I left. But here's the thing, walking away doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like grief, even when you know you're right, even when you've spent years preparing for the moment, even when every word you said was true. Because at the end of the day, no one wants to admit their family only loves them when it's convenient. I drove around for an hour after that. Windows down, no music, just the sound of tires and air, and too many thoughts. I wasn't crying, I wasn't angry, I was just done. When I got back to base, I went straight to my quarters and opened my laptop. There was another message from Rachel. Longer this time. A full essay about how I misunderstood her, how I should let go of the past, and how, together, we could be unstoppable. She still didn't say sorry. She still didn't ask how I felt, or why I was hurt, or what she could do to fix it, because she didn't want to fix it. She wanted to use it. I closed the message and archived it without reading the rest. Then I opened a blank document and started writing something else entirely. Not for her. Not for them. For me. The first thing I did when I sat down at my desk was dig. Not emotionally, digitally. Rachel had tried to sell me on this sleek, empowering brand like it was the next big thing, but my gut said otherwise. And in my world, if your gut says something's off, you verify before someone else pays the price. So I opened my laptop, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and started researching Empowered Estates. The name alone sounded like something ripped from a failed Shark Tank pitch, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt. No registered LLC under her name. No permits. No business address that wasn't a P.O. box attached to a WeWork location in downtown Miami. The Instagram page? All curated graphics and inspirational quotes, with buzzwords like legacy, level up, sisterhood capitalism. Zero details about what they actually did. Not a single mention of partners. No client testimonials. Just a pretty shell. It took me 10 minutes to find what I needed. Public records, debt listings, and property liens. Turns out, Rachel did have an investment property, A boutique townhouse project in Florida that was already in foreclosure proceedings, 4 months behind on payments, a pending lawsuit from a contractor, and a judgment filed by a marketing agency for unpaid invoices. So that brand she was pitching me? It wasn't a vision, it was a life preserver, and I was the idiot she hoped would grab it. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning the mess on my screen, and for a moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt insulted. Rachel hadn't just underestimated me, she'd assumed I was naive enough to believe that 4 years of silence could be washed away with a dinner invitation and a dream that wasn't even hers to sell. I screenshotted everything. Not because I planned to confront her, but because I knew if she tried again, if she spun some version of the story where I was unsupportive or jealous, I'd have receipts. And then I closed the browser and got back to my actual job, because unlike her, I had one. That week, I led 2 training modules, coordinated with a visiting unit from San Diego, and helped plan a base-wide leadership seminar for women in service. Real work, tangible impact, no hashtags required. And still, the texts kept coming. Rachel tried again on Wednesday. Hey, sorry again if dinner was awkward. I think we got off track. I really believe in this, and I think we could help a lot of people together. Want to chat? On Thursday, sent you a deck I made for Empowered Estates, would love your thoughts. It's rough but has potential. By Friday, I'd had enough. I didn't reply. I didn't open the deck. I forwarded it to my legal advisor instead, just in case she got bold and tried to use my name publicly. Then, I did what I should have done after the first text. I blocked her number. And before I could second-guess myself, I blocked her on social media too. It wasn't rage. It wasn't spite. It was protection of my time, my energy, and the person I had become without her in my ear. The person who no longer felt obligated to carry the emotional weight of a family who only remembered me when I was useful. I'd spent most of my life thinking silence was maturity. That saying nothing made me noble. That ignoring things was the higher road. But silence isn't always grace. Sometimes it's surrender. And I wasn't surrendering anymore. That weekend, I took a call from a former commander who now worked in a policy advisory role at the Pentagon. She'd seen the news coverage from the ceremony and wanted to talk about a potential mentorship role tied to military leadership development programs. She said my name had come up more than once. That phrase stuck with me. My name had come up, not because I forced it into rooms, not because I had a famous last name, but because I'd shown up, again and again, when no one was watching, because I earned it. Later that night, I found myself thinking about the townhouse project Rachel had bought. I remembered her bragging years ago about flipping properties with soul, whatever that meant. I looked up the address again and, out of pure curiosity, pulled the latest status update. The building was scheduled for auction in 3 weeks. It sat in a part of Miami, trying very hard to be something it wasn't, half developed, overpriced, heavy on branding, light on substance, just like her. I stared at the listing. I wasn't planning anything, not yet. But something about it scratched at the edge of my brain, the way a puzzle piece does when you're not sure where it fits but you know it does. I bookmarked the page and walked away. Not because I had a plan, but because I finally had power. And I wasn't going to waste it being angry. The Monday after I blocked Rachel, I sat at the corner table of a quiet cafe near Base Black Coffee. No cream, no sugar, just like always. I had my laptop open, not for work this time, but for something personal. That bookmarked auction listing for her failing Miami property was still sitting in my browser, blinking like it had something to say. I stared at the page for a long minute. Address, date, minimum bid, contact info for the bank's foreclosure department. It would have been so easy to scroll past, to tell myself, it's not your problem, let it go. But something about it pulled me in, not out of spite, not even out of revenge. It was something quieter than that. It was clarity. Rachel's business wasn't just falling apart, it was already gone. All that remained was the paperwork. And if she wasn't going to admit it, if she was going to keep pretending everything was just in development, someone had to deal with the mess. Might as well be someone who knew how to read a balance sheet and spot a bad deal from a mile away. I wasn't planning to buy it. I just wanted to know how bad it really was. So I called the number on the foreclosure notice. The bank rep, a guy named Wallace, who sounded like he'd seen too many of these, pulled up the file and started talking through the basics. Property purchased under a Shell LLC. Mortgage payments missed for 6 months. Multiple liens filed. No response to official correspondence. Legal status. Scheduled for auction in 22 days. I asked one question. If someone wanted to purchase the debt before auction, clear the defaults, what would that process look like? There was a pause. Then Wallace said, "We'd need to verify the buyer. Submit a transfer of lien application. Depending on the balance and interest, that could take a week. Maybe less, if it's clean." Clean. The irony. I thanked him, hung up, and immediately called Lena. Lena had been my go-to for years. Sharp, organized, no time for nonsense. She was my financial point person when I launched my first property, and she'd helped me grow without ever making me feel like I had to play dumb to get advice. She picked up on the second ring. "You never call before noon. Who do I need to sue?" "Not sue," I said. "Buy. Talk." I told her everything. The property, the debt, Rachel's failed project, the foreclosure. Then I told her what I wanted. I don't want to flip it. I don't want to rent it. I want to hold the paper, quietly. I want her debt in my name. Lena was silent for about 3 seconds. Then she said, "Okay, you're going to tell me why, and you're going to be honest." I sighed. Because she tried to use me. Because she saw my name in the news and assumed I'd save her like a PR stunt. Because she sat across from me and pitched me garbage, wrapped in fake empowerment. And because every time I've let her off the hook, she spun it like I was the problem. Lena didn't even need a beat. "Got it. Send me the file. I'll run the numbers. If it makes sense, we move." By Friday, I was the legal holder of Rachel's defaulted loan. Not publicly, just on paper, through an entity I controlled. The shell company she used to buy the townhouse? Mine now. Every missed payment? My responsibility now. But also, every decision going forward? That was mine too. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't throw it in her face. Because that wasn't the point. This wasn't a power move for the sake of power. This was me stepping out of the role she had always written for me. The quiet one. The side character. The sister with discipline, but no vision. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I just didn't want her to humiliate me anymore. Later that night, I opened my inbox and found a new message from an old high school teacher, Mr. Benson. History, 10th grade. He'd seen the article from the Navy ceremony and wrote a short note that said, "I always knew you'd do something important. You just needed space to breathe." That hit harder than anything Rachel had ever said. Because he was right. All those years trying to be seen, to be heard, to be enough, I just needed space. Space away from people who kept stuffing me into a box labeled secondary. Owning that foreclosure didn't change anything about our relationship. It didn't erase the years of silence, or the eye rolls, or the backhanded comments she thought I'd forgotten. But it did something else. It gave me options. I could decide whether to rehab it, sell it, or let it sit empty and rot just like her attention span. I had the power to erase it from the city skyline or build something new from its wreckage. And most importantly, she didn't even know. It happened at a baby shower. Not mine. Obviously I was in uniform, not in suburbia. But one of our cousins, the kind who still mailed Christmas cards and tagged everyone in Facebook photo dumps, invited us both. I hadn't planned on going, but when I saw Rachel's name on the RSVP list, I changed my mind. Not because I wanted a scene. Because I didn't. I just wanted to be there, in the same room, breathing the same air, watching what happened when the power dynamic finally shifted and she didn't know it yet. The event was held in a private room at some overpriced brunch spot, with velvet chairs and gold forks no one needed. The kind of place where everyone smells like dry shampoo and brand loyalty. I showed up in civilian clothes, jeans, clean boots, and a dark green button-up. Nothing flashy, just sharp enough that you couldn't ignore me. I brought a gift, the exact one on the registry, wrapped tight with crisp corners. No passive-aggressive messages, no grand entrances. When I walked in, Rachel was already there, wearing pastel, hair curled like she'd spent the morning in front of a mirror saying, "Just effortless," for 2 hours straight. she spotted me, and I watched it land. That flicker in her eyes, surprise, calculation, a little smile she pulled on like lipstick. "Well, look who came," she said, leaning in for a hug like we hadn't iced each other out for years. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, then stepped back, just enough to make it clear this wasn't a reunion, it was a coincidence. For the first half hour, we danced around each other like polite strangers. She kept her voice high and chirpy, talking about her business plans and Miami setbacks, like they were just temporary detours on her success highway. I listened without reacting, because reacting gives power, and I wasn't here to feed her. But then it happened. She pulled out her phone to show someone photos of the townhouse, the same one I now owned. She was telling some inflated story about redesign plans, investor interest, and a minor paperwork issue that had delayed things. I didn't flinch, didn't say a word, but someone else did. Our cousin Becca Blunt, over-caffeinated, allergic to small talk, tilted her head and said, "Wait, didn't I hear that place already got sold? Foreclosure auction or something?" Rachel blinked. No, that's not accurate, just rumors. Everything's under control." Becca shrugged, unconvinced. "Weird, because I know someone in commercial real estate down there, said it got snapped up by a private buyer last month." I sipped my coffee and looked directly at Rachel, offering nothing but a small, knowing smile. Her fingers tightened around her phone. She was too proud to ask me outright, too cornered to pretend she didn't notice the shift. So I leaned in just slightly, kept my voice low, and said, "Yeah, it's got a new owner, clean paperwork, should move fast now." Her eyes locked on mine, narrowing like she was doing the math in real time. You could almost see the flicker behind her eyes, calculating timelines, trying to remember when the foreclosure was finalized, who might have bought it, how much they paid. I didn't blink. That was the moment she realized. And she knew, I knew she knew. But what could she say? She couldn't accuse me without admitting she'd lied to everyone around her. She couldn't act outraged without revealing she was in debt up to her curled eyelashes. And she couldn't play victim without confirming she was never the hero she pretended to be. It was silent warfare, fought across 3 feet of brunch table. Eventually, she laughed. Tight. Forced. "Well," she said, brushing a hair behind her ear, "it's always interesting how things work out, just part of the process." I nodded. Sometimes you build, sometimes you rebuild." She didn't speak to me the rest of the party. Which was fine. I didn't go for conversation. I went for clarity. And I got it. Later that evening, back on base, I found a new message waiting in my inbox. Not from Rachel. From the contractor who had previously sued her. Turns out, he'd been trying to contact someone for months about the unpaid balance, and when the ownership records updated, my LLC showed up on the paperwork. He was respectful, professional, but firm. I replied immediately. Told him we'd honor the outstanding invoice, review the work done, and bring in our own inspection team to evaluate future potential. No drama, just business. The next morning, I got an email from the city permitting office confirming that my LLC had full legal control over the property. No challenges, no disputes, no fine print. It was mine now, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. For the first time, I actually walked through the place in person. I flew down to Miami, met my new team at the site, and stepped into the gutted shell of Rachel's dream project. The bones were solid, the layout was awkward, the roof needed work, and the wiring looked like it had been installed by someone watching a YouTube tutorial on double speed. But it had potential. Real, tangible potential. As I stood in what used to be the main entryway, drywall stripped, floors bare, windows dusty but full of light, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not anger, not validation, just control. Quiet, steady, earned. Rachel didn't have to fall apart for me to stand tall. But when she did, I didn't look away. The ceiling needed to be ripped out. The tile? Cheap and uneven. And the kitchen had been updated with appliances that were either fake stainless steel or second-hand showroom rejects. Honestly, it was worse than the photos had shown, but I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt focused. This wasn't a salvage job. This was a redefinition. By the time my boots hit the 3rd floor, I'd already decided the townhouse wasn't going to be flipped for a quick buck, and it definitely wasn't staying under Rachel's old brand. That name was already stained with half-finished promises and design jargon she barely understood. Instead, I'd turn the space into something real, something useful. Veteran housing. Not the kind you shove on the outskirts of town behind a gas station and call it affordable, but clean, central, short-term transitional stays for female veterans moving out of service or recovering from burnout. The kind of place I wished had existed when I first came home from deployment and didn't know how to sleep in a room without sirens or boots hitting the deck at 0400. By the end of the walkthrough, I had Lena on a call. I want to gut it. New plan, full rebrand, no trace of the past. What's the goal? She asked, already opening her spreadsheets. Veteran reintegration housing, women only, zero frills, max dignity. She whistled. Bold. No, necessary. I named the project Harbor House. Quiet name, steady. No pink logos, no fake empowerment slogans, no co-working space with exposed brick and espresso machines. Just clean rooms, strong locks, silence, and stability. We started the permits that same week. The crew I hired was half veteran-led. Every contractor on site had to understand the mission before they saw a dollar. If someone rolled their eyes when I said, female veterans only, they were off the list before they even pulled out a measuring tape. Rachel's old investors, I found out later, had mostly ghosted her the minute the foreclosure hit. A couple of them emailed me, thinking they could get back in now that the property was under new management. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't interested in building someone else's redemption arc. I was building a future that never depended on their approval. Meanwhile, news about Harbor House started spreading. Not through press releases, not through flashy ribbon cuttings or morning shows. It started small. Word of mouth inside military support groups, one woman told another. A former corpsman who'd been sleeping in her car sent a message to a friend. By the second month of renovation, we had a wait list. I kept showing up between duties, flying in and out like a ghost with a blueprint folder. My name was on the lease, the paperwork, the city filings, everything Rachel once tried to tie to her fake, empowered brand, was now under a mission she wouldn't dare say out loud. Somehow, that felt better than revenge. Not dramatic, not viral, just undeniable. I got a text from Rachel during week 4 of the rebuild. I hadn't heard from her since the baby shower. She must have finally found out who bought the property, either through her old lawyer or one of the leftover emails that bounced to her forwarding account. Her message said, "Wow, Harbor House, really? That's what you turned it into?" No, hi. No, how are you? Just immediate bitterness, like my success owed her an explanation. I didn't answer. Because what do you say to someone who only reaches out when their pride is wounded? The next message came 20 minutes later. You didn't have to do this. You could have helped me fix it. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I laughed. She still didn't get it. She thought this was about a building, a renovation, a business move. She thought I was obsessed with proving something to her when the truth was, I'd finally stopped trying to prove anything at all. I didn't answer that message either. I archived it. We broke ground on the roof that Friday. The sun was brutal, and the crews were sweating through their uniforms before noon, but no one complained. Most of them had worked through worse. Iraq, Afghanistan, hurricanes. We worked fast, and we worked clean. Every bolt felt like a reset. Every nail like a boundary being re-established. This was mine, not stolen, not begged for, earned. One of the site leads, an ex-Navy Seabee, named Julia, walked up during the lunch break. "You're the owner?" she asked. I nodded. She looked up at the building, then back at me. Respect. Just that. One word. But it carried more weight than every apology Rachel never gave. Later that night, I drove past the old sign Rachel had hung during her attempt to make the project Instagrammable. It was still nailed to the temporary fencing, "Empowered Estates, luxury coming soon." I had it taken down the next day. No press, no drama, no social media post celebrating the end of an era. Just a quiet removal of a lie. Because when you build something that matters, you don't need the world to clap. You just need it to stand. I wasn't expecting a crowd. It was just a recognition ceremony, the kind you don't even think about when you're early in your military career. No camera crews, no red carpets. Just a quiet hall, a few rows of folding chairs, and a podium that creaked when someone shifted their weight the wrong way. But somehow, it had turned into a bigger deal. Not because I asked for it, but because others did. They said the Harbor House project had changed the conversation on base. That the way I funded it, staffed it, and ran it while still on active duty had sparked attention from leadership I didn't even know was watching. They wanted to recognize me formally. Not just for that. For service. For leadership. For all the years I kept showing up when no one else did. So there I was. Uniform pressed. Hair up. Commendation pinned to my chest by someone with 4 stars and a grip like granite. It felt strange standing still while people clapped. Like I was watching someone else live a life I'd only pictured in fragments back when I still thought my future depended on my family seeing me. And then I saw her. Back row. Sunglasses still on. Arms crossed like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to applaud. Rachel. I almost laughed. Of course she came. Not when I launched Harbor House. Not when we cut the ribbon, quietly, surrounded by women who'd spent years carrying silent weight. Not when I signed over keys to the first veteran resident who'd been sleeping in her car before we opened. But here she was. Ceremony day. A room full of witnesses. Applause to hide behind. I didn't acknowledge her. Not because I was bitter, because I was full. People clapped. My name was called. I nodded, saluted, smiled for a photo I'd probably never print. The ceremony ended quickly, the way they always do, no fanfare, just orderly dispersal. People came up to say kind things. A few snapped photos for base communications. A fellow officer slipped me a folded note that just said, "Thank you for building what we needed." Then, like clockwork, Rachel appeared at the edge of my line of sight. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. It was low, measured. Not desperate, but close. I looked at her. She was wearing beige like she wanted to blend in. No flashy bag, no heels, no pitch-ready smile. Just Rachel, stripped down. We stepped outside. There were people around, but no one close enough to hear. She started with, "I didn't know what this was." I didn't reply. Let her sit in that. "I came because I heard about the award. She stopped herself. "I guess I didn't realize how far you'd actually gone." I tilted my head. "You mean because I didn't invite you?" She flinched, just slightly. "No, I just thought, never mind." I let the silence stretch. Finally, she said it. "I'm sorry." The words came out flat. Not cold, just tired. Like they'd been sitting inside her too long, losing shape. I didn't rush to fill the space. Because I didn't need her apology. I wasn't aching for it anymore. And that's what made it real. "I didn't come to fight," she added. "I came to say I see it now. What you've done, who you are." I crossed my arms. "And?" Her eyes met mine. "And I hope someday I can build something that stands like you did." It wasn't the line I expected, but it was the one that mattered. Because for the first time, she didn't ask for anything. Not credit, not access, not a bailout, or a branding collab, or some re-entry into my circle. Just acknowledgement. And maybe, quietly, direction. So I said the only thing I could say that wasn't cruel, and wasn't indulgent. Then stop performing. Start working. She nodded once. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. Just walked off toward the parking lot, heels clicking on the concrete like they belonged to someone else. I didn't watch her drive away. I turned back toward the building. Toward my team. Toward the next thing. Because there was always a next thing. That was the difference between us. I built forward. She rebuilt sideways. I walked into the hallway where the last few guests were filtering out. Julia, from the Harbor House crew, handed me a small gift bag. "Something from the ladies," she said. Inside was a bracelet. Simple, steel, etched with one word, anchor. Not flashy, not expensive, just precise. I slipped it on and felt the weight of it settle like a reminder. You don't have to hold everything to hold steady, you just have to know where you stand. And for the first time in my life, I did. 2 weeks after the ceremony, I was back at Harbor House. No uniforms. No podiums. No one clapping. Just me, in jeans and a t-shirt, standing in the kitchen next to a broken microwave that someone forgot to report. I wasn't there for press or credit, I was there because one of the women in room 4 had just gotten a job offer and needed someone to watch her toddler during the interview. So I did. She came back 2 hours later, practically floating. She got the job. No speeches, no viral posts, just a woman moving forward. That's what peace looked like. That moment. It didn't come from winning, not from outperforming my sister, or being proven right. It came from standing in a place that mattered, doing something that mattered, and realizing I didn't crave acknowledgement anymore. Not from Rachel, not from anyone. I hadn't heard from her since the ceremony. No follow-up text, no passive-aggressive story on social, no half-hearted, we should get coffee email. And that silence? It felt like closure. Because for once, her voice wasn't defining the room I was in. Mine was. A few days later, I was sitting at the front desk late at night, while the night shift supervisor dealt with a plumbing issue upstairs. It was quiet, too quiet. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and the click of someone's flip-flops down the hallway. I opened my laptop just to check on old files, and saw a folder I hadn't touched since the day I bought the property from the bank. It was labeled Empowered Estates, Original Pitch. Curiosity beat out hesitation. I clicked. Inside, renderings of Rachel's original townhouse plan. Slides full of buzzwords, photoshopped images of fire pits and rooftop yoga studios, taglines like Live Bold, Sleep Chic. It was all aesthetic, no substance, nothing about security, nothing about purpose, definitely nothing about veterans. I should have been angry. But honestly, I wasn't. I just felt tired for her. Tired of how much energy she had poured into pretending instead of building. How much time she'd spent trying to be impressive instead of useful. And how close she had been to doing something meaningful, if only she had known what that actually looked like. I deleted the folder. Not out of spite. Out of mercy. She didn't need a digital graveyard of her missteps. And I didn't need to carry around proof of how far I'd come. I had Harbor House for that. Later that week, I walked one of the new residents out to the front steps as she left for her shift. She was in her 40s, tough, quiet, with eyes that had seen more than they ever said. She paused before getting in her car. "You the one who runs this place?" she asked. "Something like that." She nodded toward the building. "Feels safe." That was it. Just 2 words. But in them lived everything Rachel's project had never achieved. Not flashy. Not Instagram-worthy. Just safe. And sometimes, that's the highest compliment you can earn. I got back inside, fixed the janky microwave door with duct tape and a muttered threat, and poured myself a coffee. Strong, no cream. Just the way I like it. My phone buzzed. It was Lena. "Just got the final numbers in," she said. "You ready?" "Hit me." "We're at 85% occupancy. Donors are asking about expansion. One in DC. Wants to replicate the model. You built something real, Sam." I leaned back in the chair and let that settle. Not famous. Not viral. Real. I didn't text Rachel. Didn't loop her in. Didn't tell her the project was becoming something bigger than either of us had imagined. Because it didn't belong to her. It never did. This wasn't about revenge. It was about redefinition. And maybe that's what real revenge actually is. Not the collapse of the person who hurt you, but the full, undeniable rise of the person they never saw coming. Later that night, after the last resident went to bed, I sat in the front lobby with the lights dimmed and the security monitor quietly flickering. The bracelet Julia gave me was still on my wrist. Anchor. A reminder that staying steady wasn't about resisting storms, it was about knowing when to stop drifting toward people who only love you on their terms. I closed my eyes and breathed. Not the shaky, hopeful breath of someone waiting to be seen, but the steady, grounded breath of someone who finally realized she already was. If you've ever been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one they only called when they needed something, this story's for you. And if you're into real military family drama and revenge stories that hit deep, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. We've got more stories like this coming, and I promise, they're worth hearing.